Merry Christmas, Canisius High School community. It is Andy Deyell, your Vice President, back with another episode of Conversations with Canisius, the web series where we catch up with alums all over the United States and find out what they've been up to since their time here at 1180 Delaware Avenue. I am joined today all the way from Arizona by a very special guest, Mr. Bob Marcin from the class of 1963. Bob, how are you?
I'm good, Andy. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Merry Christmas.
And we're going to get into, we have about 20 minutes really to spend together. And you have a very long and storied career, not only with Ford Motor Company, but as part of the U.S. military and some of these other things we want to touch on. So let's just jump right into it. Bob, when you go back in time to 1959, you're an eighth grader, you're looking to start high school. How did you hear about Canisius High School and what brought you to 1180 Delaware?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. And I hope I appeal to some of the current alum and students, because my background is a little different. I never even heard of Canisius High School. My father died in the eighth grade, so I didn't have a father. I had a single mom raising us. And I had a family that had a patriarch who was very fond of education, and he introduced us to Canisius. It was me and my two cousins, one before me, one after me. So I went to Canisius, I went interviewed and with my mother, and I just was the way life is. It's normal. We came from a rather modest background. My dad was a butcher, so I didn't have a lot of, like a lot of classmates, which was a variety of economic standing. Healthy in Williamsville, and I grew up on the east side and then Riverside and Kenmore. So it's a rather modest background, I would say. So I hope that some of the students that came to Canisius the same way can identify with my story.
I'm sure they have, including this interviewer here.
Good.
So tell us a little bit about your 4 years at Canisius. Like who were your big influences, those charismatic adults that were your favorite teachers, and what kind of clubs were you involved in when you were at CHS?
So I couldn't find my yearbook to refresh my memory, but what I do recall is the person, the priest that actually oriented me and turned out to be sort of my father figure was Father Pfeiffer, who I'm sure is long gone, but he was also sort of my coach and counselor on the way in. Not having a father, I think I missed out on having a sports mentor. So I didn't have much to do with sports at Canisius. I played with the Acrians, and then I did cross-country running. And I still walked to sort of keep my heart going the way it was. And I do remember being intimidated by a lot of the people at Canisius, and just walking into 1180 Delaware is an intimidating experience. But I really did enjoy it. And I had many teachers that I remember. The one in particular was a fellow by the name of Bob Mirabile, who I think left the priesthood. He was a Jesuit and taught Latin and Greek and a whole slew of subjects. The man was brilliant. He would hang out with us for cheeseburgers after school on occasion. And I remember in my junior year, he left and we were all saying goodbye, and we asked him what he was gonna do. He was actually on his way to Israel to translate the Bible from the original language because he wanted to find out what his real true calling was. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And about 4 or 5 years later, I was in New York City going to see a play with Barbra Streisand. And during the intermission, which we had at those times, we'd go out for a smoke. And there across the lobby, I saw Bob Mirabile in a suit and tie, not a collar. So we went up to him to say hello, and he had obviously made his decision that he didn't have the calling that he wanted. And it was interesting to see him, but I thought he was brilliant, and he was a big influence on a lot of us through school. Not to emulate, but to know that he had an independent mind to think about what he was going to do.
That's great. And right after Canisius, I believe you started out at UB, but then your life took a little bit of a detour. Can you just tell us a little bit about post CHS
Sure.
and so before you ended up at Ford Motor Company?
Sure. So while the curriculum at Canisius was college prep, it probably didn't prep me well enough. I went to 1 year at UB and I was invited to come back after another year. In that year, I got drafted into the military and drafted into the Army, into so-called military intelligence. And I got sent to Vietnam in 1966, 67, and spent a year there, made it out, not like a lot of my comrades, but it was a life-changing experience. What happened after that was also made me sort of come to my senses and say, education is important. So I went back and finished my bachelor's degree at University of Buffalo at night. I was married and moved to California after that and got an MBA Cal State system at an unusual school and made friends with the faculty. And even then, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something that affected business. And I had a thesis advisor who turned me towards a advertisement for a college recruiter at a company called Philco Ford, which was located in Palo Alto, California. I joined them as a college recruiter and worked there for about 16, 17 years and rose through the ranks in the personnel field, which I call human capital.
Right.
And before that, I worked at AIM&A's in Buffalo, which is probably not there anymore. And then I had 4 or 5 industries altogether: retail, aerospace, got into banking, automotive when I went to the parent company, Ford Motor Company, and then I went to 2 suppliers after that. So my journey was storied, but it was kind of interesting. I went to the bank because Ford was going to sell the aerospace business. So I decided that I'd go out in the marketplace and find something else. In the meantime, Ford called and asked me to join they had bought a bank in San Francisco, headquartered in San Francisco. It was a big mistake. It was during the thrift crisis of, when was it? 1989. And so I went there to restructure that bank and found out what restructuring is all about. Did that for about 3 years and decided that I had enough fun doing that. And was out in the marketplace again looking for work, and Ford again called and come and visited me and asked me to come back. They had a bunch of changes in their top management tier and asked me to come back. Had a great job heading up all the compensation and benefits for Ford Motor Company around the world. And did that and enjoyed that immensely, made a lot of contacts and made a lot of contributions, I think. But I'm the kind of person that gets bored every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to my mentors at Ford and I said, I got to do something else. And the name of the game in Ford was labor relations. So I was appointed first to an international labor job, which gave me an opportunity to travel all over the world and sort of oversee all of the labor agreements that Ford had in various countries in the Mideast, into the Far East. Negotiated the first Ford labor contract in China in those days. And then came back all the way home. And then I got the chief bargaining position in 1999 to negotiate with UAW. UAW had Ford, just to put it in perspective, Ford had 105,000 UAW members at that time. This is 1999. Ford was probably one of the more profitable companies at the time. We had just introduced a Navigator, and it was going gangbusters, and it was just doing very well. And the contract, the UAW contract was coming up. Those are 3 or 4 year contracts, depending on the year. We were after a contract to do something that was unique, and that was we wanted to take our parts business at Ford, which was about a $22 billion subsidiary at the time, and to separate it out from Ford Motor Company and to spin it off. The union didn't like that at all. Went on. The whole process of labor negotiations is about 18 months in preparation. I had about 350 people working for me full time in preparation for that. And to fast forward to when we got into negotiations in October 1999, one of those moments of your career where your whole career flashes in front of your eyes is when the UAW president came to my office and handed me a 3-day strike notice. So this is a Friday afternoon. I got a call from the CEO, and he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Jack, I don't think we're going to be building cars and trucks on Monday."
Yeah.
He's, wait a minute, you better get up here. So we spent the weekend bargaining very, very hard and managed to get through it and managed to get a successful spinoff of a company called Vistion, and without a strike. So it was one of those things that take a kid from Buffalo and all of a sudden he's in charge of this big contract, which was worth roughly $40 billion at the time. So a major issue. We got it done. The company was spun off successfully. Then I decided, what am I going to do on board with this? And the company asked me to go with the spinoff company, which I did, and spent the next 7 years there, and sort of take that company from 22 billion down to about 8 or 9, because that was about 2008
Yeah.
when the last big recession hit, and
Sure.
our stock just tanked, and we had to sort of restructure everything again. In 2007, my wife became ill with cancer, so I took a retirement. That was my second retirement, because my first retirement was from Ford into Vistion. Took about a year and a half off to help her with her challenges, or her health challenges. And then I got a call from one of my colleagues that I met, and who had just been recruited to be CEO of a bankrupt supplier company called Dana, located in, of all places, Toledo, Ohio. So this was going to be an 18-month assignment, and it turned out to be something a little longer.
Mhm.
We came out of bankruptcy in February of 2008, and by September of 2008, our stock went down to 19 cents, and we were again in the throes of a big recession. So I had to claw again and do a lot of restructuring work the next 3 years. And finally I said, that's enough, and I retired for the third time and final time. Did a little consulting after that and found out that consulting wasn't for me. I happened to be fishing fly fishing in Colorado when I got a call on my cell phone. Why I had my cell phone when I was fly fishing is another story. And I was asked to do a call about a project I was doing. And I said, why am I doing this? And I didn't need to do it. So that was it. And that was 2011, 2012. And I finally said, that's enough. So I quit.
Wow. And when you
That's
look
my
back,
story. I'm sticking to it.
that's yeah, good for you though. That's when you look back though on all of those experiences, and then you reflect a little bit on your experience at Canisius High School, would you say there is what did you learn at Canisius that helped you become so successful in your role at Ford and beyond?
Yeah, I think the first thing is discipline. I think everybody, the whole thing about 3 hours of homework at night seemed like crazy at the time, but it turned into 4 and 5 on some nights as well. So that discipline and that perseverance to get through it, I think, was extremely important, and it also set a value system that I think I kept for the rest of my life, and I think it helps with develop your judgment skills. So one thing why I think I was somewhat successful in business was that I think I exercised fairly decent judgment. I had some challenges with things that occurred in business, but I think the value set that really goes back to high school, and a lot of the teachers and a lot of the discipline that we had in school, I think is really the foundation for what comes out of a high school education.
Great. Great. And so in the advice sort of arena, if you were to give some advice to some of our alums who are either heading off to college or just getting out of college and they're just starting their careers, looking back, what kind of advice would you give somebody as they're just starting to make their way in the world?
Yeah, I think number one is be prepared for luck. I mean, a lot of parts of my career were just something happened at the right time, and I just happened to be there. Maybe that's fate, I don't know, but be prepared and look for it. Make sure you know what luck is when it hits you. I think the other thing is to be ambitious. I mean, I said I got bored every 2 years, so the ambition got me to look at different things, and I just don't like sitting around being quiet and just after, for example, after that 99 agreement with Ford, I could have sat around, put my feet up on a desk, drawing a nice salary and a good bonus. But I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something that was more different. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as you think about the things that you want to do in life and how your education prepares you for that. Be curious. The curiosity thing is very important. What did I know about labor relations at Ford Motor Company, a huge $160 billion company that I was about to bring to its knees with a strike notice? But it's just, you got to be curious about things that you can affect, for sure.
That last one really resonates with me in particular, as the father of two younger children, and as somebody who teaches here at Canisius. Sometimes I wonder, where is that curiosity? There's so much information so readily available to children today that I'm not sure they even have a chance to be curious. And I think that when you say, to be curious, to me, that's almost the same as saying be adventurous. And I think that's a really nice piece of advice for younger people today, even before they get to high school and college. I think everybody could really benefit from just rediscovering this idea of curiosity. It's very, very interesting.
I agree with that. I think the thing, it's impossible to understand what's going on to the minds of the seniors, juniors and seniors today, because the world is so changed, and
Right.
the amount of information flow and the internet and everything else. It just, sometimes it just overwhelms me. As you know, I had trouble just signing on to the Zoom call.
I think it overwhelms all of us too.
If you have people of my age, when we think back to the 60s, that was a decade of assassinations. Martin Luther King, the Kennedys,
Right.
Malcolm X. I mean, there was a lot going on in the society, in the culture of the country. And somehow we all muddle through it. I mean, things look pretty bleak sometimes on the external side and look at society, but you got to maintain your focus and your values.
That's a great segue sort of to my next question. One of Canisius is academic preparation for life, but it's also deeper than that. We talk about being men for others. We talk about this Ignatian sort of way of seeing God in all things. And I wonder, I find myself wondering, talking to you as somebody who's retired, how do you experience that in your life today? Not, being immersed in it like you were when you were at Canisius.
Well, I'm not sure it's a religious thing as much, but one of the things that I happened to do for a long time is always maintain my contacts, my friends, my colleagues, my friendships over the years. I still maintain a correspondence and a visit with ex-bosses.
Right.
I still maintain a relationship with my fellow students at Canisius. And beyond that, even in Buffalo, we formed a high school fraternity when I was a junior. And I happened to host here in Scottsdale, Arizona in 2016, a semi-reunion of whoever was left in the reunion. Half of the guys were from Canisius.
Right.
Since that time, two of them have passed on. So it's important to keep your contacts and keep grounded in the people that you know. I think that's one of the things that has kept me most interested in other people's lives and what's going on in the world.
Yeah. I mean, what you just described to me is really the true definition of manhood. But, being a man is really about the relationships in our lives and how we maintain them. Sure. And so that's another really great piece of wisdom there. Thank you.
Sure.
And, as somebody that gets bored every 2 years, Bob, I'm going to ask you now to think about the future. What's next for you in the near and midterm future? What are you looking forward to? What projects do you have that you're working on? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been almost 9 or 10 years since I've been retired. And I don't know where the time has gone. And you hear that from every retiree about, boy, I'm busier now than I ever was. So I mentioned earlier that I didn't really have a sports mentor. And I remember my classmates, that especially the more wealthy guys that were playing golf and skiing. And I never even knew what those sports were when I was in high school. And I thought, wow, that's a dream. Now, I did become a pretty good skier, but I had to retire. And I'm a good golfer, but my goal is to shoot my age, but I got to live to 105. That's my goal. But on projects, I am involved in some investments and which keeps me sort of connected to the business community. An investment group that looks at, it's kind of like, I call it Shark Tank for adults.
Hmm.
And we look at little companies here in Scottsdale in the Valley of people that have tremendous ideas that are just looking for funding. And it's just fun to be involved in that. So that's one thing I do to sort of keep my business intellect alive. On a personal side, my wife is Chinese. She was born in Shanghai. Her dad was an extremely interesting fellow who was a 1929 graduate of the University of Michigan, a PhD in economics. He wrote his autobiography in 1975. We are just getting around to having it translated and to sort of look at her family tree. And that's going to take a fair amount of our time and a lot of our interest. So we're pretty interested in that. And that's got our blood sort of rolling again. So we're happy with that.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for spending this time with us today and giving us a little bit of a taste of your experience. I wish you Merry Christmas, your family. I wish you the best of luck in the future, and I hope to see you back in Buffalo at some time soon here at 1180 Delaware.
Well, go Bills, that's what they say.
Go Bills.
It never leaves you.
Good. Great to visit with you, Bob. Thank you again for sharing, and we'll talk
Thanks,
soon.
Andy.
Bye.
All right. Thanks.